There was a scent in the house that didn't belong. I noticed it the moment I walked in. Not perfume, not anything I recognized. It was something foreign, like citrus and musk had collided and decided to settle on the armrest of our living room couch. She was already asleep upstairs, lights off, door half open, as if inviting me to peek in and confirm that yes, everything was normal, everything was fine. But it wasn't. Something was off. Something had been off for a while, but this was the first time I could taste it in the air. It wasn't one of those slow burn realizations people talk about, the kind that creep in over months or years. It hit me like cold metal, instant and unforgiving. You think you know the person you share your life with. You think there's some silent agreement, a contract built from routines and inside jokes, from road trips and burnt dinners. But that's the thing about trust, it doesn't crack. It shatters. 3 weeks earlier, she started going to the gym again. Not unusual in itself, but the timing made no sense. Her job was drowning her. She barely had time to breathe, let alone deadlift. Still, every evening like clockwork, she'd grab that neon green water bottle she never used before, slip into tight leggings I'd never seen her wear at home, and vanish for 2 hours. Not an hour. 2. Every single time. I asked once if she wanted me to come with her. Light-hearted. Just a joke. She didn't laugh. She didn't even look up from her phone. Just said, "You wouldn't last 5 minutes in that place." That's not a reply. That's a bullet dressed in silk. I didn't argue. But that night, I sat in the driveway for 15 minutes after getting home from work, just watching our windows glow like the house was breathing without me. I started noticing how little she talked now. Not silence, but filler. Things like, "I'll be late again," or "I already ate." No conversations, no "how was your day?" Not even small talk. It's like I'd been reduced to background noise in my own life. Then there was the phone. She never used to take it into the bathroom. Now it was glued to her hand. She'd laugh at messages with her back turned, that kind of laugh people do when they think no one's watching. Her passcode changed. Twice. And the wallpaper was now some minimalist black and white shot of a mountain instead of the photo of us at Niagara Falls. The change was subtle, but everything she did screamed distance. I played dumb, but I wasn't. I started keeping notes. Dates. Times. Patterns. I even went as far as to use the GPS history from our shared car app. Turns out she wasn't going to the gym at all on Tuesdays. She was going to a residential block across town. I zoomed in on the map until I saw the little blue line of her route ending in a cul-de-sac I'd never seen before. Her car would sit there for exactly 90 minutes, then reappear 20 minutes later in the gym parking lot. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. Not to catch her. I already had. I just needed to know how far she'd go. I needed her to lie to me again. And she did. So easily. Last Thursday, she came home humming. Actually humming. I hadn't heard her hum in over a year. She kissed me on the cheek like she was playing a role and disappeared into the shower. I followed. Not in the creepy sense, but quiet, calculated. I stood just outside the bathroom door and listened. She was singing in the steam. And over the sound of water, I could barely make out the ping of her phone lighting up with messages. I cracked the door. Her phone was on the sink, face down. I walked in. She didn't hear me. 3 messages. All from someone named A. No emojis. Just plain text. The most recent one, still thinking about earlier. "You taste like cinnamon." I put the phone back exactly how it was. Didn't say a word. Just walked out of the room and went into the garage. I sat in my car for an hour. Not because I was afraid of what I'd seen, but because I had never in my life felt this calm. That scared me more than anything. She thought she was saving our marriage. That's what she'd later say. That this thing with whoever the hell he was gave her clarity. That it helped her see what she really wanted. That she had needs. As if my feelings were an acceptable casualty in her war for self-rediscovery. But I had already started putting my plan in motion. And it didn't involve yelling or begging or slamming doors. It involved precision, patience, control. Because if she was playing a game, I was going to learn the rules. And I wasn't planning to lose. The next morning, I woke up before her. Not because of some dramatic emotional unrest. I hadn't really slept. I lay there the entire night, listening to her breathing, wondering how she could sound so peaceful after everything. Wondering if I'd ever felt that peace sleeping beside her. Maybe once. Not anymore. I made coffee. Strong, black, the way she used to hate before suddenly deciding she liked it, French style, whatever that meant. She came down in a loose robe that wasn't hers. It was new, plush, with a monogram I didn't recognize on the sleeve. I looked at it. She noticed me looking. She hesitated. Just a flicker. Then smiled and said, "Oh, I got it on sale online." Like that explained the embroidered initials that weren't even hers. The entire breakfast felt like a theater production. She talked about nothing, a coworker's dog, a TikTok she saw, how people are so fragile these days. Not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she touch me. And while she buttered her toast, I sat across from her and imagined what she'd do if I told her I knew everything. If I said, "Who's A?" If I said, "You smell like cinnamon and that's not your body wash." But I didn't. I smiled, nodded, played the role of the clueless husband. Because today wasn't the day to flip the table. Today was about control. I told her I was taking a personal day from work. Said I needed some me time. She looked mildly annoyed, like my schedule was an inconvenience to hers. She left wearing that same pair of leggings, the ones she never wore around me, and tossed me a casual "love you" as she grabbed her keys. I followed. Not closely. I let her get ahead. Turned off my phone's Bluetooth so she wouldn't see my location sharing had stopped. I used a second car, the old Toyota I keep for road trips. I parked a block away from that same cul-de-sac I'd seen on the GPS, sat there. Waited. 10 minutes. 20. Then I saw it. Her car pulling in. I leaned back so she wouldn't see me. Watched as she got out. Adjusted her hair in the side mirror. Then walked up to a door I didn't recognize, like she'd been doing it for months. The man who opened it looked like someone out of a commercial. Perfect teeth. Too much cologne. That kind of walk that says, "I've never had to try too hard in life." He greeted her with a hug. A full one. The kind where both arms wrap around and you stay there for a beat too long. She disappeared inside with him. I didn't take pictures. Not yet. I wasn't interested in catching her. I wanted to watch her. To see who she really was when she thought no one was looking. Because that version? That was the truth. While they were inside, I sent a message to someone she'd never expect, her sister. We were never close. She always found me too intense. But she hated liars. I asked if she had a minute. Said I needed to talk. She replied in under 3 seconds. "Call me." I drove to a diner halfway between our houses. Told her everything. Showed her the GPS logs. The messages. The monogrammed robe. She didn't even try to defend her. She just sat there, mouth tight, one hand over her coffee like she was holding back the urge to throw it. She told me she was in therapy, her sister said. She said she and you were trying to rebuild. Rebuild? That word. Like what she was doing was construction instead of demolition. I left the diner with one promise: her sister would give me 1 week before saying anything. 1 week to prepare. To take control. I thanked her and went home. I cleaned the kitchen. Did laundry. Acted like the man she wanted me to pretend to be. When she came home that night, her cheeks were flushed and she had that same damn humming noise under her breath. I asked her how the gym was. She smiled and said, "Killer leg day." I kissed her on the forehead. Told her I was making dinner. Her favorite chicken marsala. She looked surprised, almost guilty for a second. Then shrugged it off. The moment she left the room, I opened the drawer by the fridge. Inside, perfectly folded, was the receipt from the spa she never told me she went to last Friday. Under her name, under the services rendered, there was one particular note I highlighted. Couples massage. She had no idea I knew. That was the part that burned the most. But it was also the part that made this all so dangerous. She walked around the house like a woman immune to consequence. Humming, texting, fake laughing at her phone. Living in a world she thought she'd rigged in her favor. But I was no longer a bystander. I was writing the script now, and her part was about to turn ugly. The plan was already moving. First, the bank accounts. I had access to everything, we shared finances, and I handled most of the bills. What she didn't know was that I'd already moved half the money into a separate account under a trust name. Legally sound, no red flags. I needed to secure my exit before she figured out she was losing control. I printed out statements, organized timestamps, matched every spa visit and yoga class with a paper trail of receipts. She was careless but predictable. The more lies she told, the easier it became to collect them. The confrontation was set for Sunday. That gave me 4 more days. For more days to stay calm, play dumb, smile like nothing was wrong while every second boiled under my skin. I'd started recording our conversations not because I thought I'd need evidence, but because I needed to remember how her voice sounded while she lied to my face. I wanted to remember that tone, the pitch of her voice when she told me she loved me, all while knowing she was slipping off someone else's shirt only hours before. Friday night was the test. I decided to push, to bait her without giving myself away. We were watching some crime drama, her head half on my shoulder, scrolling her phone every 5 seconds. I turned the volume down and casually asked, "Do you ever think about how this all ends?" She looked up. "What do you mean?" "Us. Life. The future. Ever wonder if we're where we're supposed to be?" She blinked, calculating. "That's a weird question." I shrugged. "Just thinking out loud." She turned her eyes back to the screen. "We're fine. You overthink too much." "Not I love you. Not of course I think about our future. Just that. You overthink too much." It wasn't defensive. It was dismissive. Like my emotions were a side effect of some condition she didn't sign up for. I nodded and let it sit. Inside I was screaming. Saturday came with more acting. She said she needed to go clear her head and took a long drive. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I already had the address. I knew what she was doing. Instead, I used the time to prepare the house. I boxed up half her things. Not messily. Methodically. Labeled. Her books. Her clothes. Her spare phone charger that was always plugged into the guest room outlet. The room I now knew wasn't for guests, but for private calls and late-night video chats. When she came back that evening, I had wine waiting. She seemed surprised, maybe even suspicious. I offered a toast to new beginnings. She raised a brow but played along. We clinked glasses, and I watched her sip the drink like nothing in the world could touch her. Then Sunday came. She woke up to the smell of pancakes, her favorite with blueberries and lemon zest. I even made fresh coffee. I wanted her to feel comfortable. I needed her walls down. She came into the kitchen wearing that same robe with the strange initials. I almost laughed. "You're in a good mood," she said, stretching like a cat. "Yeah," I said. "I finally feel clear, like everything's coming together." She smiled. "Good. I think we needed a weekend like this." She sat down. I placed the pancakes in front of her, then sat across the table with a manila folder. She didn't notice it at first. Not until I slid it toward her with one hand and said, "Open it." Her smile dropped half an inch. "What's this?" "Open it." She hesitated, fingers hovering over the clasp. "Is this a prank?" I didn't blink. No, she opened the folder. Inside was everything. Receipts, maps, screenshots. A printed transcript of one of her text conversations with A, sourced from the backup she didn't know was syncing to our shared cloud. Her face drained. She didn't speak. Just sat there, blinking, swallowing air like it might save her. "I know," I said. Calm. Controlled. "I've known for a while." Silence. Then finally, "It's not what it looks like." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "That's your opener?" She leaned back. "Okay, fine. You've been spying on me. That's insane. Do you hear yourself? That's not healthy. You disappeared for 2 hours 3 times a week. Lied about where you were. Do you hear yourself?" She stood up. "This is emotional abuse. You're manipulating me. That's rich. You lied to me for months and now I'm the manipulator." She grabbed the folder, slammed it shut. "So what? You want a medal? What now, you're gonna kick me out?" "No," I said. "I already did. Your stuff's in the garage. My lawyer will be in touch tomorrow. You'll be staying at your boyfriend's place now, I assume." The moment cracked then. Her expression changed, not to remorse, not to fear, but rage. "You think you're so smart," she said. "But this isn't over." "No," I said. "It's just finally begun." I thought once the confrontation happened, she'd leave. That she'd pack her things, maybe throw a few insults over her shoulder, and vanish into the arms of the man she thought would make her feel alive again. But I was wrong. She didn't leave. She stayed. Marched back in from the garage 30 minutes later, tossed her purse onto the couch, and announced that I couldn't legally kick her out of the house. Not without notice. Not without cause. She said this like she was reading from a script her new boyfriend probably fed her, smug and proud like she'd won something. I didn't argue. I didn't even look at her. I just walked into the kitchen, poured myself some water, and said, "You've got until Friday." She stood there in the hallway, arms crossed, like she was waiting for a fight. But I wasn't giving her one. That's the part that confused her. She expected fury. Accusations. A meltdown. Instead, I gave her silence. That silence became unbearable for her. She started walking louder. Slamming doors. Leaving cabinets open. Doing little things to get under my skin. Once, she left her phone on the table with a photo open, him, shirtless, on a boat. I didn't even flinch. She wanted a reaction, needed it, but I wasn't going to hand her that power again. The house became a chessboard. We passed each other like rivals in a tournament, exchanging moves that looked like politeness but were soaked in venom. She'd cook dinner and leave it on the stove without a word. I'd wash my plate and leave hers in the sink. She started dressing up more around the house, tight dresses, glossy lips, new heels. I started working late. Or at least pretending to. But the real move came on Wednesday. I knew she was still talking to him, texting, calling, probably even seeing him during the day. But I also knew she hadn't told him everything. Like the fact that I hadn't yelled. That I hadn't begged. That I was already a step ahead of her. So I made sure he found out. I had a friend. Not someone she knew. A woman I worked with, discreet, sharp, good with social engineering. I handed her the screenshots, the folder, everything. She contacted him, posed as a mutual friend of someone in his office. Sent him a Dropbox link by mistake. Just a casual, oops, wrong contact. But the file name was deliberate. Read this before you move in with her. The next day, she came home late. Her eyes were red. Her mascara smudged. She tried to walk past me in the kitchen, but I spoke first. Rough day? She froze, turned. You told him. No. I just made sure he found the truth. Her voice cracked then, and I watched it happen, her armor fracturing. You don't get to do that. You don't get to ruin my life just because. Ruin your life. I repeated. You demolished mine. She opened her mouth to argue but had no words. Instead, she stood there, trembling, trying to muster the same confidence she walked in with on Sunday. But it was gone. He had cut her off. I knew it the moment I saw her face. He probably didn't take it well. Men like him rarely do when they realize they've been the side character in someone else's disaster. She spent the rest of the evening on the phone, whispering, pacing, crying softly into her sleeve. I heard bits and pieces. Words like, didn't mean to, and please just listen, and you don't understand. It was pathetic. Not because she was hurt, but because it wasn't real pain. It was the pain of losing her backup plan. She came into the bedroom around midnight. I was reading. She stood in the doorway and asked if we could talk. I didn't look up. I've been thinking, she said slowly. Maybe we could go to counseling. Maybe we could fix this. That was when I put the book down and met her eyes. You thought this affair would somehow save our marriage. That's what you told yourself, right? That doing this would force me to fight for you. That it would shake things up. Wake me up. But it didn't save anything. She flinched. I was confused. No. You were selfish. You wanted more, and instead of telling me, you built your escape route and called it a solution. She stepped forward. I don't want to lose everything. You already did, I said. And you didn't even notice. Her voice cracked again. You don't mean that. I do. She left the room in silence. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not just passed out. Slept. Because I knew something she didn't. She thought she was the only one pulling strings. But now her safety net was gone. And she was about to find out what rock bottom really looks like. She didn't leave on Friday. Even though I told her she had until then, even though I'd packed her things neatly and stacked the boxes in the garage like a final, silent verdict, she stayed. Walked right past them every morning as if the cardboard and duct tape didn't exist. As if none of this was happening. She started waking up earlier than me, wearing perfume to pour her morning coffee, leaving the kitchen spotless before I even came downstairs. It was like living with a ghost trying to reanimate its body. She wasn't being kind, she was being strategic. She was buying time. For what, I didn't know yet, but I felt it in every cautious step she took, every careful glance over her shoulder. Saturday morning, I found her sitting in the living room with a photo album we hadn't touched in years. She was flipping through the pages slowly, pausing on wedding pictures, vacations, birthdays. I forgot how good we used to be, she said. I didn't reply. I was lonely, she added, almost in a whisper. You were always busy. We stopped laughing. I didn't know how to reach you anymore. I stood there in the doorway watching her fingers linger on a picture of us in San Diego. We were laughing in it. Sunburnt and stupidly happy. Don't rewrite the story now, I said. You didn't cheat because you were lonely. You cheated because you thought you could do better. Her head snapped up. That wounded look she wore so well cracked into something sharper. You're not perfect either, she shot back. You made me feel invisible. I didn't make you do anything. You chose this. And now you want to drape it in poetry and therapy words. She stood, album still in hand. You think you're the hero in this? You think being calm and calculated makes you the victim? I don't need to be the victim, I said. I'm the one walking away with my soul intact. She didn't respond. She just walked upstairs. And that was the moment I knew something was coming. Something ugly. By Monday, I found out what. My boss called me into his office, tight voice, unsure eyes. We've received a complaint, he said. About what? About me. Someone had emailed HR accusing me of creating a hostile domestic environment, suggesting emotional manipulation, threats of displacement, and even verbal aggression. No specifics. Just enough vague language to paint me as dangerous. The sender? Anonymous. But the writing, the tone. I'd lived with her long enough to recognize her linguistic fingerprints. She was trying to set the stage, trying to make me look like a man unraveling. She thought if she couldn't beat me in truth, she'd bury me in perception. I didn't argue with my boss. I handed him the same folder I'd given her. Told him the truth. Told him she was still living in the house against my will and now trying to weaponize victimhood to regain control. He looked through the documents slowly. When he finished, he said nothing, just nodded, then said I could go. That night, I came home and found her in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove like we weren't at war. I made dinner, she said, without looking up. I walked past her. You sent an email to my job. She turned. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. She crossed her arms. You embarrassed me. You humiliated me. You set me up. I stepped forward slowly. You buried your own relationship and thought I'd hand you a soft place to land. You're upset because I let you fall. She smiled then, but it wasn't soft. It was hollow. Empty. A grin made of spite. You always needed to win, she said. Even now. It's pathetic. I smiled back. No. What's pathetic is trying to ruin a man who's already walking away from you. And with that, I handed her the final envelope, legal documents. A formal notice of separation. The date was final. The lawyer had been paid. The clock was officially ticking. She dropped the spoon into the pot. The splash was louder than it should have been. I'll make sure you regret this, she said quietly. I already regret trusting you, I replied. But don't worry. That's almost over. She didn't sleep in our bed that night. I heard her pacing downstairs until nearly 4 a.m. The next morning, I woke up to find every one of her boxes torn open in the garage, clothes thrown across the floor like an animal had ransacked them. And carved into the side of one box with a kitchen knife, a single sentence, "You don't get to erase me." The next morning, I stood in the garage staring at the wreckage of her tantrum. Clothes I folded for her, pictures I wrapped in bubble wrap, shoes she'd only worn once, all shredded and strewn like some kind of emotional confetti. And that message carved into the box, "You don't get to erase me." She still thought this was about being forgotten. Like her name vanishing from my mailbox would erase the version of herself she was so desperate to preserve. But she was wrong. This wasn't about forgetting. It was about clarity. And I wasn't trying to erase her, I was cutting the rot out of my life before it spread any further. I didn't touch the mess. I left it right there. I wanted her to walk past it every day. I wanted her to see what her own hands had done. She didn't mention the boxes. Instead, she started a new strategy. The sweet one. Tuesday morning she was up before me again. This time there was music playing in the kitchen, old jazz, something she always hated before but now played like it was the anthem of her redemption arc. Pancakes on the table. Fresh coffee. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. I've been thinking, she said, maybe we should go away. Just for a weekend. Clear our heads. I didn't respond. I just stared at her, this woman who once begged me to stop working late so we could have more time together, now pretending we could fix everything with a 2-night stay at some overpriced bed and breakfast. I mean it, she continued. We've both said things. We've both made mistakes. Maybe there's something still here. It was such a practiced performance I almost admired it. She wasn't trying to fix the marriage. She was trying to rewind the tape. She was hoping that if she could get me to flinch, to hesitate, she could build a new story. One where she was the misunderstood wife, the one who fought to save the marriage from a husband too emotionally distant to care. But I'd seen too much, heard too much, and I wasn't in love with the memory anymore. I was wide awake. So I asked her, does he know you're trying to rebuild things here while begging him to take you back? Her fork froze midway to her mouth. Just stopped in the air. What are you talking about? You're texting him again. I read the threads. You used the tablet, forgot it syncs to my email. You told him this is all part of the process. That you're managing the narrative. She set the fork down slowly. You had no right. I had every right. You're still living under my roof, still wearing my name, still pretending you're not staging a campaign behind my back. She pushed her chair back and stood. The syrup on her plate was starting to congeal. You can't treat people like this, she said, voice low and sharp. You don't get to play God just because I made a mistake. I laughed once, quietly. You didn't make a mistake. You made a plan. You made a schedule. You made arrangements. And now that it's all falling apart, you want to drag me down with you. I just want peace. No. You want control. Peace doesn't interest you unless you're the one handing it out. She stormed out. This time she didn't slam the door. She left it open behind her like a loose thread she hoped I'd be dumb enough to pull. That afternoon she skipped work. I got the email from her boss. Turns out she called in sick. But she wasn't sick. She was busy. Around 2 p.m. my security camera pinged a notification. She was in the driveway with 2 unfamiliar men. A moving crew. She hadn't told me. Hadn't said a word. Just assumed she'd make a power play, take her things, make a scene, and probably take a few things she had no claim to while she was at it. I got home just as they were hauling out the last box. She was standing in the entryway, arms crossed, eyes dry, like she'd finally gotten her victory. I'm taking the dining set, she said flatly. No, I said. You're not. She raised an eyebrow. I picked it out. I paid for it. I'm still your wife. For a few more days. There was a beat of silence. Then she said something so cold I almost didn't believe it came from her. Everyone's going to know what you did to me. I'll make sure of it. I stepped closer. Go ahead. Tell them everything. Just make sure you include the part where you crawled into someone else's bed and told him you were trapped with a man who bought you furniture and pancakes. The movers stood frozen. One of them was holding a lamp, unsure of whether to drop it or run. She grabbed her bag and stormed out. No goodbye, no glance back, just slammed the door so hard a frame cracked in the hallway. I walked into the kitchen. The music was still playing. That same jazz track looping, soft and dreamy, pretending nothing had ever happened. I turned it off. Then I sat in silence, surrounded by the stillness she left behind. The storm wasn't over. She would come back, but not for love, not for remorse. She'd come back for revenge. And I was ready for her. The smear campaign started exactly 48 hours after she left the house. First, it was mutual friends, people we'd known for years, couples we used to double date with, suddenly sending cautious, polite texts that all smelled the same. Hey, just checking in, everything okay? We heard some things. Just wanted to get your side. Are you doing all right? Heard it's been rough. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wanted to let her believe she had control of the story for a little while. That she was steering the ship, painting herself as the heartbroken, emotionally neglected wife escaping the grip of a cold, controlling husband. It was her last illusion of power, and I wanted her to marinate in it. But the silence made her bold. By the weekend, the second wave came, more direct, more aggressive. My mother called, confused and concerned, asking why she had received a message from someone named a friend of the family detailing emotional cruelty, gaslighting, and years of quiet suffering. A carefully worded manifesto that didn't include a single concrete accusation, just enough breadcrumbs for the reader to create their own narrative. She was trying to bury me in implication. I didn't react publicly, but I made one move in private. I met with an old college friend, Derek. Lawyer. Ruthless. Strategic. The kind of guy who could dismantle a false narrative with surgical precision and make it look like he was simply handing out facts. I gave him everything. The folder. The sync text history. The GPS data. The timeline of events. He didn't say much while reading it, just whistled once, low and slow. She's good, he said. But you're better. If this gets ugly, we don't just defend. We demolish. And that was exactly the plan. Sunday morning, I started rebuilding my side. I sent out one email to the same friends who had reached out with concern. No anger. No accusations. Just one clean, structured recount of the past 3 months. Screenshots included. Dates. Facts. A short video clip from the security cam showing her leaving the house in a robe with someone else waiting in a car. I ended it with a simple line, I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm just done pretending. The silence that followed was louder than anything she'd sent. 2 of our closest couple friends reached out within the hour. One of them even sent a screenshot of a message she'd sent them, where she described me as emotionally dead and unreachable, conveniently omitting that she was unreachable because she was too busy having yoga nights that ended with her in someone else's hoodie. The tide turned faster than I expected. By Monday, she reached out. No apologies, just 3 short messages. So that's how you want to do this? You made me look like a monster. I hope it was worth it. I didn't reply. Instead, I posted a single photo on social media. Me standing on the deck of my brother's lake house, coffee in hand, the sun just rising behind me. No caption, just peace. I knew she'd see it, and she did. She blocked me 30 minutes later. That same day, her sister called. She's spiraling, she said, telling people you fabricated the screenshots, that you hacked her accounts. Let her, I said. Truth doesn't need defending. There was a pause. Then she added, she's talking about legal action. Claims you threatened her. That was the moment I realized she was willing to go nuclear. Not because she wanted justice, but because she was drowning. And drowning people don't think rationally. They just flail and they'll take down anyone they can grab. But I wasn't in the water with her anymore. I had already swum to shore. So I called Derek and said one word, begin. She filed a restraining order. Filed. Not requested. Not threatened. She walked into a courtroom, stood in front of a judge, and claimed I was a danger to her. That I had become erratic, unpredictable, and emotionally hostile. That she feared for her safety. She included the garage boxes as evidence, twisted the story to say I'd forcibly removed her belongings and used intimidation tactics to control the household. None of it was true. But that was never the point. She wasn't trying to protect herself. She was trying to create leverage. Legal leverage. Social leverage. Any foothold she could find in a crumbling foundation. And this was her nuclear button. I found out through a knock at the door. A court officer, cold, mechanical, handing me papers like they were coupons for a sale I never asked for. My hands didn't shake. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask questions. I just took the papers, nodded, and closed the door quietly. Then I called Derek. He laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. An act of someone who had burned every other option. This is how people play when they know they're losing, he said. She's betting you'll panic. I didn't. Instead, I prepared. We filed a response. Line by line, we dismantled her claims. I submitted camera footage from the day she moved out. 0 confrontation, 0 raised voices, just her. walking in and out while the movers loaded her things. I submitted call logs proving I hadn't contacted her since she left. Text history showing that she had been the one sending passive-aggressive messages. Her attempt to manipulate the system was transparent once we put it into context. But still, until the hearing, I had to follow the temporary order. I couldn't contact her, couldn't be within a certain distance. Not that I wanted to, but it was the principle, the insult of it. The idea that after everything she had done, I was the one being treated like a threat. Her goal was to isolate me, discredit me, ruin me. But the irony? She made me untouchable. Because when people found out about the restraining order, when the whispers started, I didn't fight it publicly. I didn't issue statements. I didn't beg for validation. I stayed silent. And in that silence, the truth echoed. More friends reached out. Quietly, carefully, saying things like, "We just want you to know. We believe you." Her sister called again, said she was done defending her, that the spiral had gone too far, that even their mother had called her a disgrace. The hearing came quickly. She walked in with a new lawyer. Young, nervous. She had that same look she wore when she lied to my face, fake composure stretched too tightly over panic. She didn't expect my defense to be airtight. She didn't expect Derek to walk in with a binder that looked like it had been prepped for a corporate takedown. She definitely didn't expect the judge to start questioning her first. "Do you have any physical evidence of threats?" "No, Your Honor." "Any police reports?" "No." "Any witnesses to hostile behavior?" Silence. Derek passed up the security footage. The judge watched 2 minutes of it, then looked at her like she was made of glass. "Case dismissed. Record sealed. Motion for damages? Approved." She didn't say a word walking out of the courtroom. Didn't look at me. Just marched down the hall like someone fleeing a fire they started. Outside, I stood for a moment. Let the cold air hit my face. Deep breath. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like a door finally closing behind me. But this wasn't the end. She still had one card left to play. One last act in her crumbling performance. 3 days after the restraining order was dismissed and the dust had barely begun to settle, she tried to twist the knife where she thought it would still cut my family. She knew she'd lost control of the narrative with friends, with coworkers, even legally. But family? That was the last domain she still believed she could infect. And she didn't go for the obvious targets. No late-night text to my mother. No crocodile tear voicemails to my siblings. She was smarter than that. She went after the quiet ones. My cousin Rachel, introverted, sweet, not the type to stir anything. She was always the peacemaker, the one who tried to believe the best in everyone, even when they didn't deserve it. I found out she'd invited my ex-wife over for coffee just to hear her out. That's how she framed it when she called me afterward, her voice shaky. She said, "You've been spiraling. That you've changed," Rachel said carefully. "She made it sound like you'd been unstable for a while, and that the marriage ended because you wouldn't seek help." I said nothing at first. I wanted to hear all of it. Let it breathe. Let her vomit out the poison she'd been fed. She even said you've been tracking her phone. That you're obsessed. That you staged the whole cheating thing because you couldn't handle her growing apart from you. That last line, that was the core of her lie. The crown jewel of her alternate reality. That I invented betrayal to explain my own inadequacy. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't explode. I just said one thing. "I have the footage, Ratch. The texts. The receipts. You want to see the truth, I'll send it. But not so you'll believe me. So you'll never sit down for coffee with a liar like her again." There was silence on the line. Then she exhaled, long and shaky. "I think I just needed to hear that from you." "No," I said. "You needed to ask me before you opened the door to someone who tried to burn my life down." To her credit, she apologized. She owned it. She promised to set the record straight with the rest of the family. But the problem was, it had already started spreading. My uncle texted me 2 hours later. "Is everything okay? We heard some concerning things." Then my younger brother. "You know I've got your back. But she's saying some heavy stuff, man." Then my aunt, who's always been fond of dramatics. "If you need to talk about whatever you're going through, You can always come to me. She had lit a match and handed it to every branch of my family tree. So I did something I'd never done before. I called a family meeting. A real one. I booked a private room at a restaurant downtown, reached out to the people who mattered, no drama lovers, no distant cousins looking for gossip, just the core. When they arrived, I didn't yell. I didn't rant. I didn't show anger. I brought the binder. Yes, that binder. I laid it on the table open to the timeline of events. I showed them the security footage, the texts, the screenshots. I explained with cold, unwavering clarity exactly what had happened when it happened and what she was trying to do now. No opinions. No commentary. Just facts. When I was done, no one spoke for a moment. Then my mother, quiet but firm, said, "She's sick. And cruel. And she doesn't get to walk around wearing your skin like a costume just because she hates her own reflection." My brother nodded. "She wanted to make you look crazy so no one would notice how calculated she was." And then, unexpectedly, my father, who rarely speaks at all, said the one thing I'll never forget. She underestimated what happens when a man waits instead of reacts. I didn't cry, but something cracked inside. Not pain, not sadness. Something that had been braced for collapse for so long finally let go. The lies didn't work. The manipulation didn't hold. She had tried to hijack the truth and failed. But still, she wasn't done. She had one last play. One final, desperate move to pull me back in. She came back. Not with a lawyer. Not with threats. Not even with a plan. She came back in person. On a rainy Thursday evening, wearing the same coat I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago. Hair pulled back like she was trying to look presentable. Harmless. Familiar. She knocked twice, soft and slow, like she already knew she didn't belong. I didn't answer at first. I just stood behind the door, watching her through the peephole. She waited, checked her phone, took a shaky breath. And then, almost as if she knew I was there, she whispered, "I don't want to fight." I opened the door. She flinched a little, surprised I hadn't made her wait longer. Her eyes looked swollen, but not freshly. She hadn't been crying. She'd been living in the aftermath. She looked like a storm that had finally run out of wind. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She didn't look around, didn't linger, just stood in the entryway like she didn't want to see what had changed. Like knowing would hurt more than guessing. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said. "I'm not here to ask for anything." "Then why are you here?" She hesitated. "Because I finally understand what I did. And I think I broke something I can't fix." I didn't reply. Not because I was holding back, but because I had no interest in fixing anything. She continued anyway. "He's gone, by the way. The guy. I ended it. I told him I needed time. But, really, I just couldn't look at him without seeing the mess I made." She rubbed her wrist. A nervous tick I'd seen 1,000 times before. "I kept trying to make it your fault. To believe that if I told myself the right story, I wouldn't have to feel how ugly this really was." She looked up then, straight at me. "But the truth is, I burned down a good man. And for what? For ego? For a dopamine hit? I was chasing a version of myself I thought I lost. And all I did was destroy the one person who never stopped choosing me." I let her speak. I owed her nothing, but I let her bleed out whatever scraps of self-awareness she finally uncovered. Because in the end, she wasn't talking to fix things. She was talking to relieve herself. Like confession without consequence. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "This is everything I have left that belongs to you. Spare keys, documents, and a letter I wrote when I thought I still had a chance to explain." I didn't take it. I just looked at it. She placed it on the console table beside the door and stepped back. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," she said, "but I wanted you to know that I'm not running anymore." I nodded once. "Good. But don't mistake silence for space. There's no road back." "Not to me." Her eyes shimmered for a second, but she didn't cry. "I figured," she whispered. "But I had to hear it. From you." She turned and opened the door. Before stepping out into the cold, she paused. I thought breaking things would make me feel alive. Turns out it just leaves you buried in pieces. And then she was gone. No dramatic goodbye. No lingering stare. Just the sound of the door closing behind her. I stood there for a while. Not because I missed her, but because I didn't. Not a flicker. Not a spark. And that was the closure. I didn't read the letter. I threw it away with the rest of the trash the next morning. There was no poetic ending. Just freedom. The kind you don't celebrate. The kind you just breathe. If you're reading this and you're standing on the edge of discovery, if your gut is screaming but your heart is whispering excuses, listen to the scream. Because the truth always starts there. And the longer you wait, the more of yourself you'll lose trying to protect someone who's already gone. She thought her affair would save our marriage. But I had my own plan. And it changed everything.